Jina langu niko Jose Kazati.
Jose Kazati.
Vision yangu ninatafuta.
My name is Joseph Cassette. I've been working on a mine every day all my life, and I'm not able to send my children to school.
A day in the lives of artisanal miners. The pounding of their rocks, their timekeeper. They start before dawn and end after dusk. There are thousands of them here, digging in dangerous pits and toxic water, or scratching the earth, sorting through rubble and rock. Men, women and children, some no older than toddlers. Profits are reaped from this labor, but the people who mine these minerals pay a massive price, risking life and limb for a sack of rocks.
Les armes n'apportent pas la solution, Congo. Oh, Congo.
This is another world of stocks and shares, inhabited by multinational trading giants. In this world, billions are secured through mergers, takeovers and acquisitions. These companies set the prices of the world's minerals. They transform them into wealth, trading among themselves and profiting handsomely. But in the DRC, these two worlds have collided. We are in the Katanga province in the southeast of the DRC, in the Musonoi quarries surrounding the mining town of Kolwezi. Katanga is also known as the Copper Belt because of its vast reserves of the metal, with some of the highest grade copper deposits in the world. But in the DRC, between 70 and 90% of copper and cobalt comes from artisanal or small-scale mining.
What is taking place is pre-industrial, almost primitive mining that you are seeing, almost Iron Age or Stone Age mining, where people are breaking rocks with their hands instead of this being done by machines. The artisanal miners mine a bouquet of minerals, the most important ones being copper, cobalt, but the concentrate that they take out also contains uranium. So we would suggest that in future you're going to have very high levels of cancer in the population there because of the uranium that is there as well.
They crush and haul heavy bags of minerals, handling their loads with their bare hands without protective clothing. They dig in precarious pits, risking shocking injury, illness and death, sometimes for as little as $1 a day. The sector is completely unregulated.
You need to organize the miners, and the miners are really too demanding. And what we're doing is just to try to put them, organize them into cooperatives. And we do believe that by organizing them into cooperatives, there's a way to enhance beneficiation.
But these cooperatives are often run by mafia organizations masquerading as unions. When Special Assignment visited Musonoi this year, we filmed bosses of a union called EMAC that had been set up supposedly to protect the miners. But they were extorting money and minerals from the children and paying them a pittance.
The artisanal miners then sell to negociants. These negociants might be the mafia, they might be the Pakistani mafia, they might be the Chinese mafia, they might be the local Congolese mafia or whoever. And it's almost like slave labor that is taking place there.
The copper is then sold through trading houses to mining companies or individuals and transported out of the country in trucks or in private planes.
The company bosses, the managers and so on, don't have to get their hands dirty. They don't have to go and speak to those lowly people down there who are digging the stuff out. The company then has to provide the logistics of getting the copper out of the country and to the smelting processes.
Congolese law prohibits women and children from working on mines, but the government has done little to enforce this. Hazardous underage labor is banned in most countries, but the International Labour Organization has struggled to effectively prohibit it. And many of the tens of thousands of children working on the DRC mines do not go to school or have dropped out.
13 ans. À la fouet 10 ans. À la fouet 12 ans. Jina yako ni nani? Serge. À la fouet.
And here on Musonoi mine, as on others in the DRC, abuse of both women and children is rife. But for the artisanal miners, other options of work are limited.
Unasema unafanya combien de sacs wewe par jour?
My daily income depends on the places where I can find the most minerals. I will get about 50 kilograms. Each bag will sell for 200 francs. I can make 25 bags. That's how I survive.
If this man is lucky, he'll make just over $5, which is a small fortune in the DRC. Despite the DRC's mineral wealth, most of Congo's 65 million people still live in dire poverty, on the fringes of or intersecting with vast concessions owned by mining companies, like Joseph Kazet. He has few options, a single parent raising 6 children, all of whom work on the mines.
I'm in terrible situation. I have to pay the union to work here. They rob us, and it is my children who suffer the most.
The story of artisanal mining in Katanga is embroiled in the tumultuous history of the DRC. This is also a story about children, women and men versus machines, about informal versus formal labor, and industrial versus small-scale mining. Katanga used to be called the lung of the DRC. It was its lifeblood, endowed with some of the world's biggest mineral deposits. But decades of conflict, corruption and underinvestment have stunted the development of its mining industry. In the 1970s and 80s, the Congo's mines were nationalized. Then the country was the 8th largest copper metal producer in the world. In the worst era of the Civil War, copper prices fell, causing a recession.
The recession was as a result of the Civil War in many cases, and that ended up with Gécamine, the government mining company, privatizing. And in the process of privatizing, senior figures within Gécamine enriched themselves.
And then when these companies, these foreign companies come in, I mean, they were seen as a sort of a savior coming towards us, come to save us as a sort of a lifeline. And so I don't want to generalize, but most of these things, you know, are not on a good footing, and it is a bit problematic.
We did a study with Global Witness where we looked at just 5 deals over a 2-year period, and what we had calculated was the difference between the value of those assets and what they were sold at came to about $1.4 billion over those 2 years.
In other words, many of the state-owned mines were sold to companies for a fraction of their worth.
As the Congolese people lost their positions and status within the mining industry, so the social services and infrastructure in the towns disintegrated and collapsed.
With the rise in the value of copper, the world wanted a piece of the DRC, including China, Canada, America, Australia, the Middle East, and of course the South African government. But there had to be a quid pro quo, an exchange of favors.
The peacekeeping by the South African Defence Force actually comes at a cost. And the cost is concession. The price paid for that cost is concessions in mining and minerals in the Congo. Politics and mining is very much creating a very murky mix.
Today, the DRC's red flag for investment has turned to green. The 2002 Mining Code has been revised to attract multinationals, and in January this year, the government also introduced a mining certificate to enforce compliance in regards to corporate social governance.
We need to make sure that they are mined in compliance with all the requirements. That means there is no human rights abuse, there is no conflict, and the mining site has been certified and qualified as being conflict-free. And all the way up to the export point, we need to make sure that there is a traceability of those minerals.
Although the certificate creates some provisions for the artisanal mining sector, on the ground and below it, very little has changed. But increasingly they have been evicted and excluded from land that they could previously exploit, not only for mining but other livelihoods.
In most of the cases, the mine disrupted the livelihood of the people, but the mine is also not giving work to everyone, not by far, and they're also using contract work and migrant labour from across the borders.
The mining code in the DRC is very interesting because the mining code actually states that if you have a artisanal miner's license and you get a little identity card with it, you are entitled to exploit any minerals in the country, and if you should find yourself on a concession that is under a major corporation, you can continue mining there on condition that you have an agreement with that corporation.
But this is not often given, and sometimes results in violent clashes between the artisanal miners, the companies, and mining security guards.
And very often provincial politicians use artisanal miners to invade concessions that have been allocated by the national government to mining companies, because the provincial government feels that there should be first a consultation with the province before mining concessions is given. And so to make it very difficult for the mining company to operate, you invade its land with artisanal miners, and then you force it to actually recognize the provincial government, who will then send in the police and so on to clear the area for you of the artisanal miners which they had put there in the first place.
There is very little evidence of industrial activity taking place in the companies doing business in Katanga, and there are hundreds of small companies doing business there. But copper and cobalt mining are dominated by two multinationals. The first is Tenke Fungurume, a company owning the DRC's largest copper mine in a vast concession of over 1,500 square kilometers, almost provincial in size. Then there is Glencore, the wealthiest commodities trading giant in the world. Its turnover in 2013 was over $239 billion, more than 30 times the DRC's national budget.
It's the biggest buyer of cobalt, it's the biggest buyer of copper, it's one of the biggest buyers of chrome, and a variety of other things, right down to beans. And it's setting itself up to taking over other mining companies.
Its largest deal to date was the $29 billion acquisition of Extrata through a merger with Shanduka, Deputy President Ramaphosa's empowerment company, which took place in 2012. Glencore has also spoken openly about wanting to merge with Rio Tinto. If this goes ahead, this would create the world's biggest mining company, supplanting BHP Billiton. But Glencore has also been mired in controversy over the dealings of its South African-born CEO, billionaire Ivan Glassenberg, with Israeli billionaire Dan Gettler. Cyril Ramaphosa is also involved. Although he resigned from the board of Extrata, he remains a major shareholder in Glencore, and they are all close to the DRC's president, Joseph Kabila, himself a billionaire from the DRC mines.
We look at what they do behind closed doors in private. So we try to find employees and so on who will talk to us about these things. Then we see what they put out in public in terms of their own reports. And then we ask nearby communities and also the employees and others how they experience them. And if these things don't add up, then there's a psychological problem there. There's a corporate psychology problem with that specific corporation. What corporations, in terms of their corporate social responsibility, should try and do is to balance out these things.
Since 2008, Glencore has been under scrutiny by NGOs such as Global Witness, Bread for All, and the Benchmarks Foundation. These NGOs have released reports accusing Glencore of dodgy concession contracts, tax evasion, labor rights abuses, and environmental damage. But Glencore says it is getting a raw deal from NGOs and refutes all the allegations. It says all its deals were properly disclosed and argues that it brings investment on a vast scale with better health and safety practices than smaller local or state-run operations. It also says, unlike other smash-and-grab companies, it is in the DRC for the long haul.
We employ 17,000 people And overall, this is related to an investment which goes easily above $5 to $6 billion US. So we're really heavily invested in Congo. It's an important country for us. Those are really important operations for us. So we have a serious commitment to this country for decades.
But Glencore has also been accused of allowing child labor on one of its concessions and indirectly profiting from it.
Tilwezembe mine, okay? On this particular mine, they have perhaps 1,600 artisanal miners, and that mine belongs to Glencore, and it has an arrangement with Bazano Group through MISA trading, and Bazano Group has close associations with Glencore, and Bazano Group sends all the copper that it sends for processing to Mopani in Zambia, which in fact belongs to Glencore.
Although Glencore acknowledges ownership of that mine, it says it was abandoned when artisanal mining mafia took over.
The issue of child labour that they raise relates to a concession that we have in the DRC called Tilwezembe. Now, when we took control of that concession, back in 2010, overnight artisanal miners basically went in and occupied that particular concession that we have. We have since 2010 been working with the government to try and have these artisanal, ultimately illegal miners removed from our property. That's what it is. Now, what these artisanal miners have been doing, and I know that you've seen it when you went down there, I think, and we're certainly aware of it, is that part of their workforce, unfortunately, includes child labour. That is nothing to do with us. We do not mine there. Nothing from Tilwezembe gets into our supply chain in terms of product that is mined.
Any corporation that has a corporate social responsibility program should do a due diligence on everybody downstream and upstream that it engages with. So if you are buying copper concentrate, you need to know who you are buying it from and whether they have good human rights, environmental and other practices. Otherwise, refuse to buy it. If you're selling anything, also know who you are selling to and how they are going to use it.
Glencore owns two mining companies in Katanga, the Komoto Copper Corporation and Mutanda Kansuki. These companies are highly industrialized, employ a formal workforce and are fully operational. But NGOs still maintain that given the lack of government oversight, Glencore is profiting indirectly from artisanal mining.
If between 70 and 90% of exports of copper and cobalt in the DRC is traced back to artisanal mining, and Glencore is the major buyer of commodities in the world. It's the biggest commodities purchasing company in the world. Then most of that would go through Glencore.
We have huge industrial operations in the DRC at Katanga, Mutanda, producing roughly 200,000 tons a year of copper. And we have checks and balances in place to ensure that only the copper we produce from the ore that we have mined is exported to the countries, to our customers overseas.
Glencore invited Special Assignment to visit its mining operations in Katanga, and we accepted, together with a mining expert who was part of the research team that released a particularly damning report. We were taken to the vast Kov open pit mine outside Kolwezi. The mine is the largest high-grade copper resource in the world. We were also taken on a tour of the Komoto concentrator and the Luilu plant, which KCC took control of from the DRC state-owned mining company, Gécamine. Under Gécamine, it was once derelict, but now it is fully operational, although NGOs have accused it of polluting the nearby river. Glencore says the river was polluted before and that it has cleaned up its act. A tour of the company's clinic, which services all of the employees and their families, was next. We did not have the time to inspect all of its facilities and investigate Glencore's rebuttals to the accusations. But of major concern to Special Assignment was Glencore's corporate social responsibility programs aimed at environmental growth and community empowerment.
It's a substantial commitment to the local economy, local communities, but also ensuring that when the mine ceases to operate and being an all-bearing entity or sustainable, then we make sure that we leave it in the best condition that we found it in. That means rehabilitation, but also ensuring that the local communities over that time have built up enough of an industry that they're not reliant on the mining industry anymore.
We support 40 cooperatives for a total of 3,000 members, more or less, and we have different types of activities. So as here we have agriculture, but we have also livestock like chicken, rabbits, cattle, pigs, and we have fish farm and beekeeping in general.
And now, is this for the consumption of the community themselves, or is it also for commercial purposes?
Yes, there is a portion of self-consumption, but there is also a portion that goes to local markets and local supermarkets. And this year we are trying to work with them to create a hub when you can actually process their products in terms of vegetables and meat and make sure we can get certification for the quality of the products they produce so they can sell it in a larger scale like hotels, restaurants and catering associations.
They showed us lots of things and told us quite a few things that they are busy with. And I must say that I was quite impressed of what I saw and what we heard. We spoke to, for example, the health and safety person, and he also showed us around, and we can see that they really are trying their best in terms of health and safety. Definitely, to me, an improvement of what we saw 4 years ago.
If you're a corporation operating in any country, it doesn't mean that you should just comply. You should go way beyond compliance, especially in a country like the Congo, as dysfunctional as the Congo.
A company must not see CSR and sustainability as a sort of an add-on. I mean, it must be an integrated part of their whole approach. And they must also realize that where they are mining, either in the platinum belt or in the copper belt in the Congo, wherever, that they are part of a sort of a system.
But these communities still live on the fringes. There is no sign of infrastructural development. They remain dependent on artisanal mining, and child labour is on the rise.
We would not protect our investment if we would not behave properly and would introduce the international standards we publicly adhere to in many, many documents. We are under surveillance, not just by NGOs. Our investors, they are partners of ours, and they also look at our doing and so on. So I think this is the best answer to that question.
It's not easy. It's something that affects not only the DRC but other African countries across the continent. And it's something that we're very keen to help try and find a meaningful solution to, as I say, with government and our other partners.
But that cannot happen if profits in the DRC continue to matter more than the people who live there.
Au Congo, qui peut écouter le cri de ceux qui pleurent au Congo.